Hey, all my JavaScript friends, this is the Virtuoid, aka Mike Smith, and this is the player class JavaScript video. If you like this video, please click on the like button below, subscribe to this channel, or leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Alrighty then, so that's time to do the JavaScript to make sure the test passed. Now, as you can see right now, we do have a couple tests that are actually passing. This is because, again, we had developed a very simple player class in order to be able to satisfy some of the tests in our round videos that we did earlier. Seems like almost a year ago now. So what we're going to have to concentrate on here is to pass the test for the lock card, remove lock card, and set lock card. Now, the remove lock card and set lock card, notice there are no routines for this. So let's go ahead and let's first of all fix up the two lock cards, the set lock card and remove lock card first. Okay, so here's the code for the set lock card and the remove lock card. First of all, we're going to put the import statement in on lock card. That gives the import statement for a type of card. So what are we looking for here? Well, first of all, look and make sure that the argument that is passed is indeed a type of a card. And what that will do is that will solve or make true this particular test where we should throw an exception if the card is not an instance of card. That takes care of that. Also, we're going to make sure we can find that card within the deck, because if we can't find the card, then we shouldn't be locking a card that we do not have. And that will satisfy this particular error message, or this particular test. Should throw an exception if the card is not inside the deck. Finally, we're going to just set the lock card equal to card, and that should satisfy this test where we have put the card inside of our deck. We set the lock card, and the lock card should be equal to our particular deck. So that should fix up the lock card specification. And the remove locked card, let's take a look at that. It has those two tests. We should be able to remove the card and we should return null if there is no lock card. And that's really simple. We take lock card itself. Lock card starts off as null automatically. That's the default value, no matter what. In fact, you can't even set it through the argument. So the default value is null. So we come back down here. We set the card equal to the lock card. We reset it to lock card to null. That basically means that, if there was a card in there before, now there's not going to be a card because we're removing the locked card, and then we're going to return it as a promise. And that's very necessary because when we're dealing out cards, or when we're doing the lock cards, we're dealing with promises all over the place. So unlike the setting of the lock card, which is an immediate process, removing the lock card needs to be a resolved promise. So once we've got that done, that should allow us to be able to take care of this test, which is removing the lock card, and this test, which makes sure that the card that gets removed is indeed a null card. So that should clear up remove lock card and set lock card. So let's run our test and see where that leads us, and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, we're done, and yep, now the set lock card and remove lock card specs are running correctly, but the lock card spec is not. So let's take a look at what error is occurring here. So we'll just scroll up and scroll up and scroll up and scroll up and scroll up. There it is. Okay. So should record the lock card when player is human and the card selected in timeout. And we actually expected error to be true. Basically, we got an error that said we didn't lock the card when we should have got a true, which is correct, because if we take a look at the lock card here, basically we're saying if it is a human, we're going to reject it and say we're going to time out. And the reason we did this is when we originally did the round, we just made everybody to an AI and just immediately say, hey, my human is, we're not going to worry about a human right now. We're just going to worry about this. But now that we've got the player setup, we're going to have to worry about whether the person is a human. Because again, if you want to play this game online, which is the eventual goal of this game, it's going to be one human against 3 AI players. So, or eventually 4 humans against each other if you want to go worldwide logins, but that's going to be way down the list here. So we're going to need to be able to have the ability to sit there and say, okay, I need to wait a certain number of seconds, and then if something doesn't happen within a certain number of seconds, then we reject the promise. Otherwise, if they have selected a card to lock, therefore we will resolve the promise. So this doesn't do that at all. So let's get some code in there. And this code is going to look kind of funky, but I'll explain what's going on there. So let's pop some code in there. Boom. Alrighty. So a couple new things here. First of all, still the same resolve promise. If the player is not human, we're going to sort the deck. We're going to do the lock card, and then we're going to resolve the player. That part hasn't changed. What has changed is the code to be able to figure out what to do about the countdown. So first of all, we got to set a particular countdown. And this countdown is going to be stored in a private variable called lock card timeout seconds. Well, obviously that's not there. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to pop a new private variable there, lock card timeout seconds. Now, we need to be able to set a default number of seconds that we're going to wait. Because remember, when I did the test, I said that Cypress will time out after 4 seconds if a test doesn't respond. Now, normally I'm going to want maybe 30 seconds or so for somebody to be able to click on a card to unlock or something like that. Well, I can't have Cypress sit there and wait 30 seconds, whenever I have this particular timeout. It's just going to slow everything down. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to default everything to 3 seconds, but allow the application to be able to change it. So let's put a default value. Since the application is going to be allowed to change it, it's going to have to come into the constructor. So we're going to add a third construction here. That's going to be, lock card timeout seconds equal to 3. So this is going to set a default for locked card timeout seconds. Let's now save it to our private variable, and that takes care of the lock card timeout seconds. So by default of 3, that's going to go within the Cypress timeout time, so the testing will work fine. But then a application could come in here when they create a player and say, okay, I want this timeout to actually be 30 seconds instead of being, 3 seconds, because obviously it's going to take longer than 3 seconds for somebody to be able to click on a card. So that will take care of this down here. So what we're doing here, we got a little countdown, and within this countdown here, we're going to set an interval that every interval, and that interval happens to be lock card polling timeout milliseconds. So actually, we need to create that next. And that's just going to be a private variable that's basically static or unchanged. We're not going to allow to change it. We're going to default to 10 milliseconds. So every 10 milliseconds, we're going to strobe lock card to see if lock card has changed. And we're going to do that within the set interval. So every time the set interval runs, what we're going to do is that we're going to check to make sure the lock card is null. If it is not null, that means the lock card has changed. And if the lock card has changed, we're going to clear out the interval and we're going to resolve the player. So it's saying, the player is ready to go. We've got the lock card. So the player is ready, rip roaring, ready to go. All right, so what if the lock card is null? Well, we don't do anything. We're going to decrement our countdown. And what our countdown here is our countdown is the number of milliseconds or number of timeout seconds times 100, which means the number of iterations we're going to be using, or number of iterations is going to happen before we time out. And in actuality, I just realized that this is inside of an array. This should be 1,000 divided by this number right here. Because if we're going to have the parsing at 10 milliseconds, what we really need to have here is this divided by this dot, wrong, kind of doing a PHP there. Lock card polling milliseconds. Okay, so what that now does, okay, cool. This works a heck of a lot better now. So now if we change this value up here, this is going to change automatically down here. So this basically says that this countdown is the number of times we're going to poll within our timeout period. And this is our timeout period right here, which in this case is 3 seconds to begin with. If that countdown hits 0, we're going to stop the timer by doing a clear interval, and then we're going to reject, saying the timeout waiting for player to lock card. So basically what I've done is I've built an observable here. To be very honest, I don't like it. I think it's kind of a hammer way of being able to do an observable by doing a little set interval, but honestly, I don't know of another way of doing it. No, you're sitting there saying, oh, you could use, RxJS or something like that. Well, sure, yeah, but we got one variable we're taking a look at here, to include a whole library to do that. No, that's just not worth my time. It's not worth the application's time. We're just doing one variable. This is good for right now. But if you've got any ideas of how we can be able to build an observable better, let me know down in the comments. We're here to share information. So, hey, let me know if you know of something that will work a little bit better. But for now, I'm just doing a simple little set interval to check to make sure lock player is null. If it's null, we keep going until the countdown is 0. Once the countdown is 0, we reject it saying, hey, we didn't do it a countdown. If it is not null, we got a locked card. So we're going to do the clear interval, and we're going to resolve the player. So that should fix our locked card issue. And make sure I got everything else done correctly. It looks like I've got everything else done correctly. So let's go into the test. Let's clear off the screen. I'll see you on the other side. And we're done, and all of our specs have passed. Yay! So now the lock card spec is now passing. So we now have the ability to be able to sit there and say, okay, we're going to wait on a user who's a human user to be able to click on something and populate that locked card when they need to. So that completes the class. Wasn't a whole lot to there since we'd already done most of the class with the round. So we now got the player class all locked up and ready to go. If you happen to like this video, please click on the like button below, subscribe to this channel, or leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Again, thank you so much for watching the video. This is the Virtuoid, aka Mike Smith. We'll see you later.